Listener discretion is advised.
The opinions expressed on this podcast are those of the individuals, and they do not reflect any official view of the United Steelworkers, USW Local 105, or its officers or sub-board members for officers. Now, from the banks of the mighty Mississippi, this is Steel Revolution.
Hello, podcast listeners, and welcome to Steel Revolution 94.
9-4.
Thanks, Sean.
You're welcome. Okay, talk to you later.
I'm Roy Hutt.
I'm Mike Nicholas.
Sean Geisens.
Lee Schaefer.
Thanks for joining us.
As we would call him, Dead Man Walking.
Thought you were going to say something else, but that's okay. All right, let's start out by talking what's seems to be on people's mind, and that's the mask mandate. We don't know what that means for us, if anything.
You mean the vaccine mandate?
Vaccine mandate, yeah.
Got you.
Is this part of the local?
Thanks,
I'll
Mike.
help you out.
Thanks, Mike.
Is this part of the local?
Yeah. I added that in there because I think we should say something.
I agree.
So,
Okay.
who knows? Probably take months or who knows how long before anything goes into effect. And so we don't know a whole lot. There's not a lot to share there. But what we have been hearing off of our committeeman's meeting is that some people that test positive for COVID have had their short-term disability benefits denied. If you do have that, or if you fall in that situation, get a hold of your committeeman or call the hall. We need to know about that. Again, there's no temporary policy for COVID absences. So you either get covered by short-term or make sure your attendance is being corrected and at least excused for the time you are gone in relation to that. Of course, you need to call medical and be put on the list for those days to be excused.
But make sure you're, again, like Roy said, make sure you're letting your committeeman know or calling down here and talking to your bargaining rep. We need to get you on a list so we make sure those hits are taken care of.
Yeah, most people to date have had their attendance corrected, or payroll is working on getting those corrected. But going forward, we need to make sure that we bring those names up to the company. Yep. 239 days until contract expires, 12 p.m. on May 15th. Everybody should have got their contract surveys in the mail. So those are due back to the hall by October 15th. If you did not update your address, we would have got them back, and you need to stop by the hall to pick up a copy. The contract logo contest, I have that kind of fell off my radar. I got some winners, so I'll be reaching out next week to those individuals, and then we'll be trying to work in their artwork into our contract information one way or the other, whether it's stickers or on handouts or what. We'll be working on using them. I can see I'm a one-man show today.
You are, right now. Keep it going. I don't think that's what he's looking for.
Thanks, Sean.
Yeah,
There you go.
that's for the next time.
You can't do it ahead of time.
No, I just did.
Ruined it.
I don't know what radio station you worked at, but you can't do it ahead of time. It's got to be in the moment.
Something's wrong with him.
We are working on another solidarity event in October. What date, Lee?
We're looking at October 16th.
So October 16th, we're going to be heading over to, hopefully, downtown Moline. So more to come on that. We didn't have a solidarity event or solidarity tour at the bars, solidarity march or pub crawl. But we did encourage people to go to the Casey Wages event for the benefit for him. Saw lots of people out there when I was there.
I did too. I think we all kind of went at different times, so I saw a lot of people from Arconic there, a lot of members.
Yeah, I know I went, probably 7 to 8:30, and it was still going strong at that time.
That's good. Hopefully they get a lot.
The company continues to hire people. There will be a class coming in on the 20th, so next Monday, and then another one on the 27th. And then they have committed to doing 2 hiring classes each month until they get the plant healthy. So hopefully with all that working in, we get some people trained. Hopefully the forced overtime will come down. So we continue to work with committeemen and the bargaining reps to work on forced overtime within the departments. The vacation selection process has started. Again, this is your day at a time, your pre-selection, so you can always pick, like, say, 2 day at a times. You can always go up to 3, but you can't go back down.
Nope.
United Way campaign will start on October 4th. We're going to do the same thing we did last year. So people that come down or that give will get a gift. I need to check with Marguerite, see what she ended up getting. But so you'll be able to go down there and fill out a new pledge form if you want. Remember, it'll automatically roll over. So if you want to opt out, then you got to fill out the form again. Or if you want to give again or up, you need to fill it out again. And then depending on how our so that'll be that week and the week after. The times will be in the Forerunner. I know Marguerite already put it in the works. So if even if you don't go down there but you rolled over, we'll work on getting you the gift. Another reminder, if you're going to request to have Veterans Day off and you're a veteran, thank you for your service, but those request forms have to be in by October 11th. All right. Again, if you did not update your address, we've been getting back surveys and getting back the election notification for the international election. Been getting them back in the mail. I've asked some committeemen to go back out and let people know we need an updated address. So I'll continue to send out emails on them. Again, if you did not get either of them, please call the hall and update your address. For a SOAR committee that's listening, SOAR has canceled all of their monthly meetings until further notice due to COVID. Your committeemen should be asking through your CAT teams, your contract or communication action team should be asking you to fill out cards for the We Supply America card, and Lee's spearheading that campaign, so I'll let Lee talk about it.
So yeah, we handed out cards at the committeeman meeting on Thursday. So for those that don't know, the infrastructure bill passed the Senate. It's currently sitting in the House. This is a pretty important bill to us, as it's going to create good union jobs, not just now, but into the future. We just want our tax dollars too, and that's what this. So the International did a big bus tour to try to get We Supply America, which is making sure that it's American-made products going into this infrastructure bill. So we're asking people to fill out cards so we can give them to the lawmakers, so they understand that we don't want issues like that's going on with the chips for the vehicles or anything like that going on. We want that stuff made here in America. So that will support not just our jobs here, but other steelworker jobs all across the country.
Yeah, our tax dollars need to go towards people working in the United States.
Yep.
Around the local area, if you go to the River Bandits game this weekend, I believe it is Saturday,
Okay.
the Quad City Federation of Labor will be handing out flyers or whatnot. It's not anything in protest to our minor league baseball owners or anything like that. It's to highlight the low wages that minor league baseball players make.
Do we know what they make a week?
What, Mike?
I don't know. That's what I'm asking. Do we know?
I thought you were going to tell us.
No. I know it's not a whole lot, but $200-300 a week?
Yeah, it's very low.
Yeah, that's what I thought.
And if they didn't have support families, they
Yep.
might be living in their cars and whatnot. So it's to highlight that if you see those guys out this weekend.
And if I understand that right, that is the owners here at the minor league has nothing to do with that. It comes from the owners of the team
Of
as
the
a whole,
league, right?
Okay.
Yeah, that's what I thought. I thought the league sets
Yep.
their pay. So
Okay.
Yeah, they
it's
said
not like each owner can say, hey, you get $10,000 a week or whatever.
Sure.
They're set.
right. Mike, have you heard the phrase "no contracts, no snacks"?
I have recently.
What was that about?
That's about the Nabisco strike, I believe.
Yeah, 200 workers represented by the Bakery, Confectionery, Tobacco Workers, and Grain Millers, BCTGM, went on strike in Portland, and they were soon followed by locations in Colorado, Virginia, Illinois, and most recently Georgia. So Nabisco has seen record profits during the pandemic, but they keep on working their employees extra hours and paying them less overtime. Shawn,
Yeah.
want to tell the listeners what Nabisco stands for?
Well, what do you think? I know everything? What, man? What's up? National Biscuit Company.
Thanks, Shawn.
You're welcome.
At least we all learned something today.
And it had to come from me. It's all right.
If you have a trivia night, you may want to invite Shawn.
That's right.
I'm pretty good at trivia. Useless trivia, but at least I know something. Like I know how to push this button. Thank you.
He's an industry insider if it comes to music and radio.
I was told he's a professional today.
Professional what?
I don't know. I just said a professional.
Oh, okay.
The comments from the union is that the Nabisco is treating the workers like peons and not sharing their profits. Median wage is $31,000 for employee compensation. It's very, very low.
Wow.
So good luck to those brothers and sisters at Nabisco.
I just want to get a hold of some of them stickers. Have you seen them? People are putting on at the grocery stores where the Nabisco products are. It says Nabisco's on strike. Don't buy this product.
I did see that.
I
Yeah.
I want to get a
Yeah,
hold
I see
of some of them
those.
stickers
Yeah.
and put them in the grocery stores.
Well, if we can't have Nabisco snacks like Oreos or Ritz crackers, Teddy Grahams, or whatever, Mike, is there any other snacks we should see? or
Well,
get?
so we've been talking for a few weeks, and the recipe corner's back. We brought Lee back. He's our special guest again today. So I've had some help from some great young ladies in making today's recipe. They would not give me the ingredients, nor would they give me how they made it. So I just had to take their word for it that it's going to be great. And all I had to do was walk in and say, Lee Schaefer. Everybody came running. So I have today's snack for us, if you guys want to partake.
Sure.
I do. You're coming back, right?
Is that the treat? He left and he's not coming back.
Oh, look at there.
Oh, that's a big box, Mike.
Oh, my.
So all I had to do was say Lee Schaefer, and they came running with a box of a dozen donuts.
This is the Lee Schaefer assortment.
This is the Lee Schaefer assortment.
So can I walk into Hertz
This is-
Donuts
this
and
is what
ask
they-
for the Lee Schaefer?
This is what they say he gets every day. So
I like
he
the
walks
Cookie
in, this
Monster
is
one.
what's ready for him. So
Okay,
I was wondering why you guys wanted me to be here today.
Lee, which one out of these is the best?
It's not a cheat day.
What do you mean?
I thought any day
Oh,
that ends with Y is a cheat day.
Wait, you can only have a half dozen today then?
Yeah.
So
One donut back in 2014.
One donut.
one donut ever in his whole life.
Since 10 o'clock this morning?
You just say his whole life? Like
So
donut
we got Homer's.
See if Roy can call them all.
Homer's, what is that? Andy's Mints.
Nope. Twix.
Oh,
Ooh,
the
Twix. Cookie Monster, and what's that one?
Jesus, they're churros.
Ooh,
Pat says you got to leave him one of them.
churros.
Yeah, the churro
Oh,
ones.
I might have to leave some. For
Leave some
somebody else,
crumbs.
too.
Yeah, there's not a chance I'm eating one of these.
So for those of you that know, Lee is the donut king. So we had to have the donuts made specially for him today.
That's a good one.
I'm sure there's some of you that listen to this that already know that. Some of you that don't. Now you do know that. Anytime you see Lee, make sure to offer him a donut or ask him if he has any donuts.
We would take a picture and put the Lee Schaefer assortment on the podcast Facebook page.
I'll say this caught me off guard. I will say I wasn't expecting this at all. It's good. It's good.
One of these days, you're going to figure everything out.
It doesn't look like that's coming anytime soon.
No.
I would agree. So we'll partake.
Why
in
is
some,
that not on the agenda? That's weird.
We'll partake in some good donuts and come back with a couple good interviews.
We'll see you in a bit.
All
All right, joining us on the podcast is Kimberly Carroll. She is the president of the Iowa Postal Workers Union. Thanks for taking time and talking with us today.
Well, thank you very much for the invitation.
We always begin our interviews with getting to know our guests. So, did you come from a union background? And how long have you been a member of the Postal Workers Union?
Well, I come from a semi-union background. My father and my uncles were teachers and belonged to the ISEA and the teachers' unions, but my father did leave teaching for quite a long time when I was growing up and didn't return to it until after I had gone off to college. But whenever they had an opportunity to participate in a union, my folks were union workers, and my family was union workers. They just didn't really have that much of an opportunity as I was growing up. And for me, I have been a union member since I started at the Postal Service, even as a non-career employee in 1992. I was hired as a non-career carrier and had the opportunity to join the union at that time, and it was one of the first pieces of paper that I signed when I walked in the door. So, nearly 30 years.
Wow.
Oh, congratulations.
So, Kimberly, can you tell us about the Iowa Postal Workers Union, and how many locals are there, and how many workers does the union represent in Iowa?
Well, we have about 2,000 bargaining unit employees across the state. The state association represents all of the small office employees, like the folks that are working in the retail or at the retail counter, in your small offices, our maintenance folks. Support services deals with all the back office type issues like payroll, that kind of thing, and they are part of our union. We have about 10 active locals across the state, but really, for my part, the state represents all of the small offices that don't have a local operating directly in those offices. There's usually 1 to maybe 10 people in the office. And so we're all over the state. There is roughly about 800 post offices, small offices, that are under the umbrella of the state organization.
Okay. We first had the pleasure of hearing you at the Iowa Federation of Labor Convention, and we heard about issues and concerns involving the U.S. Post Office. We would like to inform our listeners about them. Our locals and our delegates found the information to be very informative. Let's start with the issue of the pension funding, and that's where you started, and the other gentleman that was talking to or addressing the convention started. What's the big misconception about the pension funding?
Well, I think the biggest misconception is the fact that it is a pre-funding mandate. So the Postal Service is required to deposit funding for employees that haven't even been born yet, people that we don't even know are going to be hired into the Postal Service, but we're required to pay in advance into this retirement fund. And that has put a serious hardship on the Postal Service financially, because we're the only organization in the country, probably in the world, that has this very heavy burden or bill that we have to pay every year at the beginning of our fiscal year. It's roughly about $5 billion that we have to pay before we sell a single stamp. And so we start out every year in the hole because of this pre-funding mandate. And the other misconception is that somehow our retirement is in jeopardy if the Postal Service doesn't do that. And that really is not the case. The Office of Inspector General did an audit and found that we are financially sound for our pension. So there is no reason that the Postal Service should be obligated to make this pre-funding payment. And that's really what has been driving all of this, all these reductions in austere policies, because that's no company can really survive that kind of a debt that is pushed upon them at the beginning of every year financially. That's like somebody having to pay taxes all at once for their whole life in 1 year, every year for 10 or 15 years. That's crazy.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, if we could discuss next the list of changes of services, all these changes seem to have a common theme, which is that these changes will result in a lower quality of service for customers. Let me give you a change so you can explain what that means to the customers. Let's start with cuts in retail hours.
Okay, so because I represent all of the small offices, this is a particularly difficult thing for me, because it really represents the fact that customers in the small communities don't have access to our services. What will happen is they will reduce the hours that the offices are open potentially. We've already seen some of that begin to happen as a way of saving money, where they increase the lunch hour that the post office is closed. In most small towns, that lunch hour is when many of the community actually came to do business with the Postal Service, or they will shut the office down early or not open it as early. So it does not provide access to services to those communities, and that creates a hardship for folks that live, especially in rural communities, and elderly people who probably don't have the transportation to go to larger offices or visit offices that are open longer hours, and those are usually in bigger communities.
One of the other changes that was mentioned was rate increases. Could you explain that? Because I think there was a couple different things going on with the rate increase and when and how it's different than in years past.
Right. We just implemented the most or the highest rate increase on August 29th. It was a 3-cent rate increase for first-class stamps. So it went from 55 to 58 cents, the highest in history in a single increase. In addition to that, on October 1st or 3rd, we're going to implement a special rate increase for parcels because we're going to be moving into the Christmas season. That's never been done. The Postal Service has always provided universal service, regardless of the time of year. You paid the same rate, and we were traditionally much lower, a much better value to postal customers than our competitors, especially in the package industry. But for the first time ever, we are implementing these special rate increases. And unfortunately, it appears that this is going to be happening every year, that this is a new tradition. And it is, I think, again, another way to create distrust and dissatisfaction with our customers, because they're going to be expecting to come in and pay a certain rate and not realize that the rates have changed again. And it's one of the things, as a retail clerk can tell you, that when it comes to providing postage and services to the customer, the thing that they dislike the most, or they complain or grumble about the most, is the fact that the prices continue to go up. And sadly, we're not providing the same kind of services.
Now, before Lee asks the next topic, I want to bring this up, as we go through this and the listeners hear all these different things, that
I want to bring up that it sure seems like this is really convenient or perfect timing, along with all these different issues that's happening, to just try to, like you say, to make the customers or the public distrust the post office and want to move to like a privatization or there's all this what do I want to say, it's a bunch of made up kind of misconceptions in order to say, well, this the current way we're doing business with the public isn't working.
I agree with you. I believe that all of the things that are happening are specifically designed to undermine customer satisfaction with the Postal Service. Prior to Postmaster DeJoy being appointed, the Postal Service had the highest of all federal agencies, the highest satisfaction rate for customers across the board. Many times we were in the 80% satisfaction rate. As we have started making the changes that have been proposed by DeJoy, that satisfaction is beginning to be undermined. We are no longer able to provide the services that the customer has grown to expect. I mean, we have over 200 years of providing services in a certain way, and within a year, Postmaster DeJoy has undermined that service. And he is not being transparent about the rationale for making these changes. I think you're exactly right that once the public loses the satisfaction and loses trust in the Postal Service, it is going to be ripe for privatization and selling it to the highest bidder. And sadly, somebody is going to get a wealth of equipment and infrastructure, and it's going to be at the expense of the American public.
Yeah, absolutely right. I mean, perfect timing to constantly, as you said, constantly change the rate at Christmas when somebody may send a similar package year after year, and it would be so obvious to them, well, that sure seems like a lot more money than I paid last year. I mean, it's ridiculous.
Well, and on top of that, the changes in the service standards that are being proposed, those are also going to come just before we hit peak season. And already we are seeing the estimated delivery of parcels being expanded to be the 4 and 5 days. And it's sad because I waited on a customer today that sent a package, a priority package from Waterloo to Des Moines, and the estimated delivery is Monday.
Oh.
A customer came in shortly after, sent the same type of package, a priority package, to Virginia, and has the same delivery estimate of Monday. So, for the people who live in Iowa, we are the ones that are going to be experiencing the greatest frustration in our delivery because we are going to see the greatest increase in our delivery service standards, or, how long it's going to take to get from one part of the state to the next. And that's really hard to explain to a customer. And it's something that we should be very vocal about stopping because it's not necessary.
Right. So, can you kind of tell us how they want third-party companies to transfer the mail?
Well, this is not a new concept. Third-party companies like FedEx and UPS have been leveraging the very extensive delivery network from the Postal Service. The Postal Service delivers to every address, regardless of where you are, what type of geographic location, if you're in the mountains, if you're down in a canyon, the Postal Service is going to make delivery. UPS and FedEx don't have the same kind of network. So what they do is they contract with the Postal Service to make that final mile delivery. They might transport the mail, for instance, to Waterloo, but then we're going to sort the mail to Waverly and make delivery in Waverly and Eldora and some other smaller towns. So we will do the final mile because they don't have that kind of network, and they can't afford to buy the equipment and pay the employees and that kind of stuff. So this has been around for several decades now. And in exchange, the Postal Service gets to put their priority in express mail on the planes that are transporting the FedEx and the UPS mail. So it's sort of reciprocal, and it's been happening for a while. And it's one of the things that I think needs to be explained, because Postmaster DeJoy and the postal executives were saying that the only reason that we couldn't meet our service standards is because of air traffic delays. Well, we've been contracting with our competitors to make these reciprocal exchanges where they transport our air mail and express mail, and we do the final mile for them on the things that they don't have transportation or access to. So when he says that that's the reason that we have all these problems with our delivery expectations, that's not the real answer. The real truth of the matter is that since they put in the pre-funding mandate and the Postal Service has been trying to figure out how to meet that financial burden, they have stopped investing in the Postal Service, in the infrastructure, in their employees. They have stopped hiring folks. They have not been replacing folks that are retiring. And the real problem, the real cause of the delay, is the fact that they have not invested in having the people in the places where they need them to be, or the equipment that we need in order to keep the mail moving. That's really the problem. It stems from that pre-funding mandate, and that's what's causing all of these austere policies to take root.
Our last change, or our topic here in this section, is the surface transfer centers. What are they?
Okay, so in an effort to make mail more efficient, what is happening is private companies are being contracted to take mail and consolidate, process, and transport the mail for delivery. So while you might be bringing your mail to the Postal Service for delivery, we will then have to send it to a private company that is going to do all the work that we have been doing, sorting and getting it ready. But what they're going to do is they're going to hold the mail until they can get the containers 100% loaded, the trucks 100% loaded. And these private companies do not have the same service obligations and commitments to security and safety of the mail that the postal employees do. These are private companies that don't take the same oath, do not have the same mandates that the public expects for the treatment of their mail. And that's what's happening when folks are tracking packages and it looks as though it stopped moving. They will bring it to the post office, then we have to transfer it to the surface transfer centers, and they don't have the same obligation to provide the information to the customer about what's happening with it. And so it looks like it disappears or it's sitting at its last scanning point. And it probably is, because that's a surface transfer center, and they're waiting for the containers to fill up 100%. So if you think about that, if you have relatives that live in California and they want to send something to Iowa, how many people from California are sending things to Iowa? it could take several days for a container to fill up and then be dispatched for final delivery. And those are the kinds of delays that we're beginning to see. And the same is likewise when you're sending things out. The things that might be sent locally or nearby could fill up faster because you probably have more contact with folks that are nearby. But the things that you're going to be sending to the East Coast or the West Coast are going to take several days because not very many people have contact with, folks that far away. And so we're seeing delays. And the real issue here, I feel, is that they don't have to, they don't take an oath to protect the sanctity of the mail. There is no security, and the tracking makes it appear as though the post office maintains custody throughout the whole transfer or transportation of the mail, and that's not true. And we're seeing more and more of these surface transfer centers develop because this is their solution, and it is the first toehold of privatization. And what really bothers me is that DeJoy, Postmaster DeJoy, created the surface transfer centers. He built a Expo Industries, which is exactly one of these surface transfer centers. It's the same thing, and he continues to be under investigation because of the ethical questions with regard to his continued relationship with the surface transfer industry. And it's one of those things that when you come into the Postal Service, one of the very first things that is drilled into you in orientation is the expectation that you do not violate any of the ethical codes, the federal ethical codes. We cannot appear to do wrong, to have anything be wrong, or to look like we have done something wrong. It's the appearance of wrongdoing that gets us into trouble. And yet we have the leader, Postmaster DeJoy, who has repeatedly had the appearance of wrongdoing and unethical behavior and is constantly under investigation, who continues to remain the leader of the Postal Service and making decisions that are going to affect the American public and our ability to use the mail for decades. And I think that's wrong. That's just very wrong.
Well, certainly the issues around the surface transfer centers seem misleading and not very efficient for the customers. Maybe for them it's efficient, but certainly not for the customers. Well,
and it's only going to get worse. I have some real fears about the increased use of surface transfer centers. And it is not necessary. This is work that we have always done before. We were doing it. We were able to successfully handle all of the mail for the elections in 2020. We have always been able to process mail up until DeJoy became our leader at Christmas time. In 2019, we had a banner year where we outperformed even UPS and FedEx with the volume that we handled. And then everything tanked in 2020 and under the leadership of DeJoy. And so it's a bad state of affairs, and it doesn't have to be that way. We can do the work we have, and the employees want to provide the services that our customers have grown to expect. But we have some executive leaders that are standing in the way and need to be replaced.
So up at the Fed convention, we had a resolution to that Postmaster DeJoy must resign or be removed because of his undermining public confidence and bad policies. What can our listeners do to help remove him and support our brothers and sisters in the postal union?
Well, the most effective thing is to be very vocal about your dissatisfaction in what's happening with the Postal Service, and demand excellence from the postal leaders, the Board of Governors. I highly recommend that everyone write letters to the Board of Governors, to the Postmaster General, to our congressional leaders, to our senators, and even to President Biden. We have an opportunity in December to continue to build a public-friendly Board of Governors by replacing two of the members whose term of office or appointment expires. And so it's going to be important that we continue to make the Postal Service and the Board of Governors, having a complete Board of Governors, a high priority for President Biden. He must nominate two new members, and they should be members that are going to have the public's interest in mind, and want to maintain service for the public, not to build another business. The Postal Service was never designed to operate as a business. It has always been designed, and our purpose is to provide communication services to the American public. We are supposed to bind the nation together, and what is happening is it's continually being talked about and treated like a business, and that is not the mission of the Postal Service. So President Biden needs to appoint board members that understand what the purpose of the United States Postal Service is for the American public. And so I encourage people to be writing letters, to be making phone calls, to make a lot of noise between now and November 6th. That's the next Board of Governors meeting. And then on December 7th, when Ron Bloom and John Barger's terms end, then we need to have President Biden ready with two new appointees for that board so that we can then have faith that the Board of Governors will be able to take action to remove DeJoy. Right now, the board is in support of Postmaster DeJoy, and we need to have a board that will oppose this plan, oppose the terrible changes and reduction in service, and put a Postmaster General in there that is going to lead this country in a unified way to have a means of communication that serves the entire country.
Kimberly, that's all the questions we had for you. I want to thank you for taking time after your shift, after getting off work, to take time to talk to us. Everybody says, well, the Postal Service this or the Postal Service, well, you need to give time because, it's taking longer now or whatever. And everybody says stuff and makes comments about that, but I don't believe everybody knows exactly what's going on. So I want to thank you again for taking time to talk to us so we can tell people, what's really going on.
Well, I appreciate that. And I would also like to let the listeners know that if they would like to stay up to date on actions that are being taken to try to save the Postal Service or any news about changes in the Postal Service, there is a Facebook page. It's Save Our Postal Service on Facebook, and it is people like myself, employees from all over the country in all different crafts that have come together to come up with plans and ideas to share so that we can give voice to opposition and to try to save the Postal Service and make it return it to what it was designed to be, a service for all Americans. So I would encourage them to check out that Facebook page so that they stay updated. And thank you so much for letting me join you on your podcast.
Joining us on the podcast today is Pete Hurd. He is the Secretary-Treasurer of the Iowa Federation of Labor. Pete, thanks for joining us today.
Yeah, thanks for having me on. I'm looking forward to talking.
All right, we always begin our podcast with getting to know our guests. Did you grow up in a union household?
I didn't. Both my grandfathers worked at the Dubuque Packing Company, so they were union. So my parents knew what a union was, but my dad worked at a liquor store back when Iowa was when he was pretty young, but when Iowa used to regulate liquor, so he was in a union then. And then he worked in some manufacturing plants, and for a while, one of them for a long time, tried to get a union in, but they kept busting the union and firing people and stuff like that. So I had a good idea what it was, but all of my dad's friends were union tradespeople, it seemed like, just seemed to who he hung out with. And that's kind of how I got a little bit, that's how I got most of my union background, but both my parents were, blue collar type people who, told me if you want a decent life, the union way is the way to go.
Yeah, that's a lot of how I grew up. Both my dad and then my grandpa were Teamsters, and I remember my grandpa saying, "Well, you need to get a job with a pension," and always knowing that, well, I think I have a good idea I can take care of a family if I had a union job. So how did you get involved, or how did you get your first your union job, and then what led you to be the Secretary-Treasurer of the Iowa Federation of Labor?
Well, when I worked in some construction jobs. I went to high school for electronics, and I did really well on a physics test once, so I kind of got into the electrical field that way. I went to college for electronics, and 2001 happened, and that area was really hit hard with job loss when I graduated. So I just did construction work, and I was doing enough of it, working with people around who were in unions and just kind of help them out around their house. And they're like, "Did you ever apply for the Electrical Workers Union?" And I was like, I don't know what to even do. And they're like, "Just go and apply." So I did, and worked as a helper for just an unindentured apprentice for a little bit. And then a few months later got into the Electrical Workers Union, and probably did what a lot of people do, and was get involved with the union. When I could start going to meetings, I started going to meetings, and when there was stuff to volunteer for, you volunteer for it. One thing that I want to emphasize is how impactful it was when I was first getting in. That the current people I worked with really encouraged me to go to meetings and get involved too, and speak up on things that impacted me. I really think that, even though I think I would have always been involved, it's really important for people to, either meet somebody at a meeting or ride with them, or, get them their first start, because I think that kind of impression really showed me that the union was really important, because everybody I worked with went to the union meeting. And another thing they did was really talked about how important the labor movement, and we need more people in the union and stuff like that. Whether if it was our union or another, we really need to, encourage people. If you work for someone else, you probably need a union. And that was kind of some of the stuff that they taught me out early on, which led me to get more involved. And I ended up an organizer position opened up in our office. The IBW construction offices all have an organizer, and so I applied for that and got that job and did it for 6 years. And then this opportunity at the state Fed came up, and I kind of mentioned, I've always believed that our power is not just within our own union, but all of the unions. And this really intrigued me. And this job also has a lot to do with politics, as serving as the lobbyist for the Iowa Federation of Labor and pretty much every other worker in Iowa. So, it really took my interest, and I was fortunate enough that everything just kind of landed right for me to end up here. But it all really began by going to meetings and getting involved.
Nice. So, Pete, what can you tell us about the redistricting that's happening in Iowa? And is this normally something that happens after a census?
Yeah, and you're exactly right. And the census happens every 10 years. Somebody asked, did they just make the census up so they could do the redistricting? It's like, no, this is all part of the process, right? Every 10 years, there's a census, and then it coincides with the redistricting. And, even though Iowa's population really didn't change a whole lot, there was a 4% increase, the population shifts. And in order to make sure that people have the proper amount of people have representation is really important. For one example, there's a special election in Ankeny, Iowa, this week on Tuesday, and they had almost as much population as a Senate district, which is normally 2 House districts. So this one House district grew, almost doubled in size in 10 years. So there really needs to be that population shift. That's kind of where redistricting comes around. And then not only do we redistrict the 100 House of Representative seats in Iowa and the 50 senator seats, but nationally, the congressional seats are all redrawn too to match the population shifts. And we've really seen, since the country's been developed, there's the urban areas kind of grow more and people tend to go towards them, and then the rural areas kind of shrink for many different reasons. But that's what the redistricting process is for, to make sure that, people have kind of equal representation.
Yeah. Should union members be concerned about this, or is there something they should be watching for?
Absolutely. And really every person should understand what redistricting really is. And, I think for a lot of years, for many decades, probably it wasn't, the tool that's used it is today for political purposes. Not a lot of people really want to talk about politics, but you really have to understand that it does affect every single day, whether if it's a state law or a federal law or anything like that. And the process of, which party is in control kind of decides, is decided by some of the redistricting processes. And some states like Ohio and Wisconsin have been really hit hard. Even if you Google Wisconsin or Ohio redistricting, there's a ton of kind of shady stuff that goes on, that's been going on that happened at the last census, where districts really were kind of different areas of states were really wrapped together to kind of manipulate the power struggle in a state. And in a state like Wisconsin, where even the majority of people might vote for a Democrat, but the state legislature has been kind of gerrymandered so much that Republicans are really in charge of the power, even though the majority of the people might vote a different way, just the way they draw the maps. And if you do Google redistricting, and there's some simple maps that show kind of squares on how they can kind of draw lines around with keeping the populations the same, how to do that. And there's kind of simple blocks that kind of show you that. It's not that complicated, but it can be kind of used for nefarious purposes. So it is important to understand what's going on.
Okay. So will there be any public hearings, and how can people get involved?
Yeah. One of the first things that just happened this week on the 16th, yesterday, was the new map in Iowa was released. Now, every state does redistricting different. Iowa has one of the best in the country. I wouldn't say it's completely foolproof, but it does really offer a good nonpartisan way of doing things. This first map was released. It's in Iowa. There's a group called the Legislative Service Agency, the LSA. They are a nonpartisan group, actually a nonpartisan group. They don't just call themselves that, and they get together and they provide information to the legislature when they're doing bills and things like that. So they provide a lot of nonpartisan just information and data. Well, their task was putting this map together. So they draw the first map, and then the legislature comes together and votes on it. So it's been called by the governor. The session in Iowa is going to start on October 5th. The map is already been released. So the legislators will meet on October 5th and vote up or down on the first map. Now, if that first map gets voted down, then the LSA draws a second map, and then that process starts over again. Now, in the meantime, there are 3 public hearings coming up. Every map gets a chance for a public hearing. There is one on September 21st, September 22nd, and it's September 20th, September 21st, and September 22nd. Those are all public hearings. They're going to be virtual this year because of COVID, but that actually is probably more beneficial to the public and allow input on them. So next week they'll have the public hearings. October 5th they'll have the vote on the first map, and then if they vote that down, the process starts again for the second map. LSA has 35 days to redraw the second map. There's hearings, and then the legislature will vote on it again. Now, if they vote that down, there's a third map drawn, and the same process happens again. But on the third map, the legislature can vote on amendments to change the map as they will. It's not a complete. They can't draw the lines wherever. They have to keep cities and townships like contained. They're not supposed to divide anything in half. Districts have to be compact, is what they call it. So there isn't any goofy lines. Like, for example, like one in Ohio, there was a big city and a smaller city, and they really drew like a really thin line down like a highway to connect them. In Iowa, the way our Constitution's written, it really kind of guards against that. So some people were thinking in the past. But that's kind of what the process is laid out right now. There is a lot of pressure on legislators. The first map came out, and there was a lot of talk online about how a lot of legislators are kind of pitted against each other, because when they draw maps, they might take 2 people who are legislators and put them in the same district. And sometimes those people move, sometimes they drop out, things like that. So there's been some talk over that, but and then there's congressional pressure from the national parties on how they want to make sure that things are fair according to their standards. So there's kind of some different dynamics that come into that, but in all, it's decided by the legislators in Iowa what the map's going to look like in the end.
I was reading an article in our local paper about this, and it seems like I want to say, correct me if I'm wrong, the last 2 times this has happened, it never made it past the second map. What's kind of the history on the way it's been voted on, Pete?
Yeah, it has been that. It normally has been in. There's been in the past couple redistricting processes, there's kind of been a power dynamic where Democrats controlled one house, or the governor and the Republicans. So there wasn't like complete control by one party. So there's a lot of negotiating going on, and nobody really wants to fight over some of this stuff, because once they redraw the first map, the second map could be it, or the third map, depending on what they vote on. So there's a lot of compromise of like, okay, this is good enough and it's fair, right? And that's one of the things that we really support here, is the nonpartisan agency drawing the map, and not to get into the political partisanship stuff that the amendments might bring. So we're really hoping that the party control looks at this and goes, the Republicans say, hey, this is actually a fair map that represents the interests. there's only really so much you can do with the few major cities in Iowa that kind of control a lot of the population. So it kind of comes down to that.
Okay. So Pete, at the Fed convention, I know some of us heard what you're doing at the Capitol, but for our listeners, can you kind of let us know, is there anything else that's happening at the Capitol that working men and women need to be aware of?
Yeah, I mean, the biggest one that really affects so many people, it affects 80 to 100,000 people a year, is unemployment. When you go on unemployment, you're losing your job at no fault of your own. Majority of times people don't quit their jobs and get unemployment. They lost it because they didn't have a choice. And there's really been a nonstop kind of attack of bills over the last 5 years that have been trying to undermine unemployment. This past year, there was a bill that actually got a lot of traction, but it didn't actually get to the floor. But it was going to create a 1 week waiting period before you got unemployment. So you'd actually, unless you stayed on unemployment to the very end, which is 26 weeks, you actually lost that first week. I worked in construction for a lot, for the majority of my career. And there was times when we were slow and you're often on unemployment at different times, because work was just, we all kind of ride the roller coaster of whether work's available. And, to think that I wouldn't have gotten that first week of unemployment, would have been just awful, because you don't get, usually your employer doesn't give you advance notice when they're laying you off, so you can kind of prepare for that coming. Many times it comes on a Friday and you find out you're not working next week. So you're going to that could end up really causing a pain in your pocketbook and hurt your family. The other changes they were going to make was if your company goes out of business, you actually get a 13-week possible extension of unemployment. And they were going to remove that section. And then there was also a section of the bill that if you had 3 or more dependents, they were actually going to cut that section out of there. So as of right now, if you're single, you get a certain amount of unemployment. If you claim 1 dependent, 2 dependents, 3 dependents, and it stopped at 3 plus, but you actually got a little bit more than the person who was single, which I was single for many years, and I thought that was kind of a fair deal. It takes a lot to raise a family. They actually wanted to cap that at the 2-person amount, and then if you had 3 or more, you would kind of just be out of luck. We fought against that, and we had a lot of really good help from many of the union members around the state who testified, and we even had a public press conference on Zoom and had people testify to draw attention to it. And I think that really did help. And there was a study done in the Des Moines Register on unemployment, a poll done, and people don't want changes in unemployment. Anybody who's been on it knows that that's one of the hardest things that can happen to you as a worker. And Iowa may pay the maximum benefit, I think, is $571, but the majority of people make under $400 a week on unemployment. So this isn't a huge amount, but it's an amount that could save somebody's mortgage or car payments from getting, reclaimed or something like that. So that was the biggest one last year. Coming in the future, we're looking at a lot of things. There's been a lot of talk about pregnancy accommodations in the workplace for women. Some women don't even get a chair when they're pregnant, or maybe some businesses actually limit their bathroom breaks and things like that. And if I've had my wife was pregnant one time, and I understand that it's not the same as it is for a man when a woman's going through that kind of stuff, and they should have better rights than what the Disability Act provides. And I think that legislators are really moving forward to seeing that that's important. Another thing is adoptive leave. Currently, right now, there really is no leave process for adoptive leave unless your employer specifically provides it. There's been a bill going around the past few years that would, if your employer offers pregnancy leave for a biological child, you would actually get that if you adopted a child to create that time period for bonding and things like that. And that's something we've been pushing for, and really talking about. But the business lobby is strong in this state, so like many others, and it's really hard to push back against those kind of things because it financially impacts employers, and they don't really like that. I think that's one thing that people really need to understand is like the business lobby has a big control over what happens in Iowa. We really need to use our voices and talk to our legislators, no matter what party they're in, and try and highlight these issues moving forward so we can have some real workplace changes in Iowa.
Well, Pete, as we wrap it up, we don't have any more questions. Is there anything else you'd want to bring up?
I would like to say that I didn't know anything about redistricting probably 5 or 6 years ago, and it's, as this decade or this redistricting process took fold, we were able to see kind of the manipulation that some states took to kind of take political power and control. And I read this book, I don't want to swear in here, but it's Rat F Word, and it was written by a guy, and it was one of the, I'm not a person who sits down and reads a ton of books all the time, but this is one book that was very easy to read. It had a lot of cool pictures in it showing you the districts and things like that. And it really talked about the redistricting process and what gerrymandering is and how that goes. So if you're looking for that, it's RATFUCKED. Cool book. If anybody's interested in redistricting, really think you should read it. It was written kind of for the average person. And that's what I am, so, and that's what most of us are. We're just trying to find our way through life and work hard and, take care of our family. So, yeah, I recommend anybody looking into that information to check that book out.
All right, we'll see if we can put that in our comments or something on when we post it on Facebook.
Sure.
Yeah, I mean we're wrapping up. So, I just want to take a minute to tell you thanks for everything you do. I mean, I imagine being up at the Capitol and trying to talk to people about what's important to working men and women in unions is probably like beating your head against the wall. So, thank you for all you do. That cannot be an easy job.
Yeah, but I mean, to be honest, it's like getting people like what I was involved and engaged in the political process into talking to these legislators and letting them know how it impacts you. That's the stuff that really matters. Like, I am more of a conduit. And we work here at the Iowa Federation of Labor to educate workers, but also put them in a position of power to influence legislators so we can do things that are good for working people.
Well, thanks for taking time to join us. And if there's anything ever going on, reach out to me. So I always like when it's easy, like this came about, where I get like an interview dropped in my lap, because otherwise it's hard to sometimes find them. But if I need some help, if there is anything that you need to talk about and get out there, please send me an email.
Yeah, I'll definitely do that. Me and Charlie will keep that on our radar. And, I think we could expand on this in the future too. I think you guys are doing something pretty special going on, and we'd like to highlight it more often too. So if you think anything, if you ever have a question, like if you're ever at a blank or something like that, just reach out to us and say, hey, do you guys got anything going? You guys got anything where you can point me to? And I'm sure we could find something. So,
all right, sounds good. I'd appreciate that help.
Yeah, you bet. Thanks for doing this today.
All right, no problem. Thanks for joining us, and have a good weekend, Pete.
You take it easy, guys.
Take care.
Bye.
All right, bye. Ready to wrap it up, Shawn?
Wrap it up.
Lee was doing some rapping earlier.
Yeah, he was pretty good.
That was Pat.
Shawn,
Yeah, Roy.
where can people find us?
Well, thank you for asking. They can find us on our Steel Revolutions Facebook page, Apple Podcasts, Podcast Addict for Android devices, iHeartRadio, Spotify, the Odyssey app, Libsyn.com, the locals websites, and of course the men's restroom here at USW 105 in Bettendorf, Iowa.
You go get you some merchandise. You get you a $4 pint glass, and you put it up to the wall, and you can listen right in.
Yes. Do we still have the Steel Revolution podcast?
Pint glass?
Yeah.
Yeah.
They are a hit at home. They are.
There's some people asking about them now lately. Tried to tell. You put it in the Forerunner, but sometimes people don't see it. Like, hey, we got new pint glasses.
Yeah, they're
And they're like, oh, I gotta get one.
yeah, they're spectacular.
They're pretty good.
Love them.
Got a cool slogan on it, Rachel.
What was that slogan? I came up with it, and I can't remember.
Official listening device.
That's right, because it is. They are.
You came up with that?
I did.
Yeah, he came up with that.
Were you surprised or what?
I'm
I'm a professional.
He's a professional.
Yeah.
Right.
All right.
Thank you. That's people clapping for me.
All right. Until next time, don't forget to say something good about your union.
Every day. Steel Revolution is a production of Steelworkers 105, Bettendorf, Iowa.